Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Ink Terrax the Tamer. My name is Anthony. I'm with Inkwise Studios. And in the last episode, I was spotting more blacks and rambling about my past experiences in the comic book field and books that I recommend. So, this video will be going over more of the same. I'll be getting more into the backgrounds on this. And what I like is that when I spot blacks in the background, it's usually pretty easy because there's like a lot of large black areas. In this particular image, I don't have to be so precise with the brush since the penciler indicated that the wall is kind of rocky. So, kind of just get to blaze through it. But before we get to that, we'll just kind of finish up some stuff on the figure. So, let's get into it. Alright, so just doing some contour lines real quick. I know last time I was talking about, books that I would recommend. You know, I would say that, if you watch the last video, every book that I recommend, of course, take it with a grain of salt. Not just because it's me. Probably would be a good reason for some people, but I would just say that whatever works for you, make it work for you. Like some people will, can be fantastic inkers and never pick up those books. So it really just depends. I know also that there are good inking guides in like classic books like How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. It's very simplistic, but very effective. I know in that particular book, which I also would recommend, by the way. In that particular book, they go over, how to not underdo it when you're inking a page, like putting too few details or, making all the lines the same width with no line variation. And then they go over doing too much, putting too many blacks and too many details on the page. Whoops. And I just made a mistake. Wow. I was trying to wipe off my hand and it just blotched there. Oh well. Well, it's not too bad. Like, I can go in with white on this in a little bit. That's already in a black area. It's just a little smudgy smudge right there, so it's not too bad. So I'll just come back to that. And like I said before, I will make mistakes on camera. I do want to capture all that because I guess I want to show that nobody's perfect. No, I'm not perfect. As if you needed proof that I'm not perfect. But, I guess I just want to be real on camera because being real is cool. You gotta be real. Because then I can go over my process for correcting stuff. And here's the part where I would say this is really, you really have to take what I do as far as corrections with a grain of salt because I don't correct stuff the way I want to. And I've said before that usually if I get it right, if I get a line or a section right the first time, that's when it looks the best. The quality of my art, I've noticed, always goes down the more I have to correct stuff. So, of course, obviously, the obvious answer is don't mess up. But it happens. Like just now. I wasn't trying to make this happen, but it, just kind of happened. So, we'll be fixing that in just a second. I really just wanted to wait for it to dry. And I did want to get some ink down on this fist over here. My hands are kind of clammy right now. So I did the last video like a few hours ago. And I was working on some other stuff around the house and my hands got clammy all of a sudden. So I hate when that happens. But I try to just work through it and wipe off my hands. just getting this knuckle section. Let's see. Scrap these. I'm trying to make sure I'm in frame. It's hard to do that when you're actually inking, but I know I always when I'm inking, I always want to make the line perfect, like perfectly straight. Even though I know that it's not always going to be perfectly straight. I know that there are a lot of guys who ink who I respect, like you could say Klaus Jansen, who will be definitely be one of those guys, not the only guy, mind you. But be one of those guys who lays down the line and it's not perfectly straight. The line variation is not necessarily even, but it still looks good because he has a like an emotive quality to his lines. So it's more expressive. Like it's not necessarily precision. And I guess that's another thing that I want to talk about as I get my correction stuff ready. And like I said, I'll be using this Scepter Gold 2 number 3 for corrections. It doesn't have a perfect tip, but it works well enough. And also for my whites, I use Daily Rounding Pearl White, diluted with a bit of water because the regular Pearl White is really thick. And if I can get it open here, I should have put this top on here. So, yeah, I wanted to talk about like different styles of inking, and it's just weird how there are so many different inking styles by so many different types of pencil inkers, and um, I like all of them. I like a good deal, a good range of inking styles. I have precision guys that I like, and I like more of the expressive guys that I like. And just real quick, when I do corrections, I just usually try to go over it in like with 2 coats, because with the Pearl White, it's not totally opaque, especially since I dilute it with water, and that's just to make it flow better. So I'll just go over it once, and you'll see that you can still kind of see it looks gray on camera, but I'll just go over it once and kind of let it dry. But while that's drying, I can hit this other area down here because I don't think I'm gonna keep that smudge. It's not necessary. So I'll just cover that. That's almost dry, so I'll hit it again. 1 to 2 coats usually does it. And it's like my usual process is to scan in Photoshop and do the corrections there. So basically I'll scan it in Photoshop, and then I will like go in and just like hit the erase tool and get rid of all of that. But if you get like the original art of mine, then you may see like some white spots, which I hate because I don't want you to see those. I don't want you to see that I've made a mistake. But maybe that's just me. I kind of don't want to be infallible. I want to be infallible, but of course I can't be, because I do suck on certain things. So I guess I can't help that. But either way. Okay. So let's get away from the figure for a second, and let's start with these backgrounds. So start with this side first. These are good because with pencilers like Ed McGuinness, I can, he pencils so tight to where it's just like you just kind of ink what's there. Let me just fix this feather real quick. Stuff like that bothers me, or it's not like a clean taper. But anyways, you just kind of ink what's there with him. But on certain areas like this wall here, I could spot the black, and I'm actually filling black right now. I'm not really spotting it. Um, on here, like when you see like the rough stone textured edges, you kind of get to play with it a little bit. And what I mean is, instead of just doing a line like this, I'll add like little cracks like that all around, and maybe some stone texture. And actually, let me spot these blacks instead of filling. Not that there's necessarily anything wrong with filling. It's just, I want to be consistent. So, because there's something about a page where it's like you spotted all the blacks without filling too much. The way it looks is just beautiful. And, I just like to do that. But I am usually not that patient. So I usually just go ahead and fill the blacks as I go along. So that's just my thing. I get hung up on certain things. It's like I have to, sometimes I go through it and I was like, I have to fill this because I want to see how it looks. Yeah, so like an edge like this, I will definitely not use a straight edge or ruler or anything. Just go down it with the brush. And what I try to do with the brush is I try to make these jagged lines. And it's difficult to do that with a brush because you have like a flowy kind of line, or it's just very wispy. This is kind of the nature of the object. But if you were to use a nib, like what most normal people would be using on this section, uh, it would give you that hard edge that you would be looking for, and that would that would be what I would say is like the only drawback to my preferred uh, method of inking, is that since I use primarily brush, I know that, and I've been told many times that you know a brush can replicate any line. Just if you have enough skill, you can replicate nib effectively enough. If you have enough skill, you can replicate a tech pen. You can ink straight lines with a brush if you're skilled enough. Uh, you know, and I know that to be true because I know I can replicate those lines, but I don't always do that. So it's just kind of the nature of the brush to give you a very wispy, uh, kind of sultry curve. It's just the way the instrument is made. Now, if you talk about a nib, the nib is a steel. It's a piece of metal. So um, it naturally gives a hard, brittle edge on everything. You can, with enough skill, you can make it flow. You can make it curve and make you know, give you elegant lines. I know that's possible as well, but the natural inclination of the tool is to, as far as nibs, give you a hard-edged, brittle line. And that's why they always say, you want to use nibs on inorganic things when you're inking, such as cars or buildings or stone texture and things like that, like sections like here. You'll usually want to use nib on that, but um, since A, I don't prefer nib, and then B, I kind of am out of nibs because, like I said, I still do use them for certain applications. But because of those two reasons, I'm just going to use brush on this, and I just try to replicate that jerkiness by varying my line weight. It's not as effective as just using a nib like a normal person, but I think it gives enough So spot these. And you notice like I put X's all over everything. I don't know if I mentioned this, but the X's are just it just means fill black in comic book creator language. Um, and it's like I'm only doing it for myself because I'm going to be the one filling black. So it's like it's not necessarily that I have to tell myself that, but I just prefer to do it anyway. It's just kind of force a habit. And also, I notice I put like a lot of X's over everything. Like a lot of artists, they'll just put one X in a section, and there's like, you know, this isn't rocket science. You know what area to fill. Um, but I put X's, like multiple X's, all over the area that I have to fill black in. I don't know, maybe just because I like it. There's no real reason for it. I just do that. So I can tell this video is not going to be very good, but that's okay. Just keep chugging along. Okay, so we're just getting this section of Earth behind Terrax. Spotting these blacks. On this line here, I think I'll just dry out my brush a little bit and see how like a dry brush texture will work. Just keep it kind of dry. And just make sure it's even. Okay. And also, one thing I try to do always is that, you know, I try to keep my textures consistent. So if I'm using dry brush in one area, I kind of need to use it enough to justify it being there. Because I remember I gotten a lot of, you know, feedback over the years, and I remember one particular artist when he was doing a portfolio review for me, he was telling me, he was like, you know, you just cross-hatched a bunch like in this one section of the page, but you have no cross-hatching anywhere else on the page. He said, so either you need to kind of step up your cross-hatching game or you need to leave that out. It's like you know, if you're going to do it do it all the way. You know, make it convincing because it just looks spotty when you just do it in one section. He said, so, you know, and he gave me Jim Lee as an example. It's like Jim Lee crosshatches, but he doesn't just crosshatch in one section. You know, his entire image is filled with cross. Like he puts lines on everything. So he takes it to the max, and it works for him because he cross hatches consistently. You know, that's not like something that he does sporadically every once in a while. Uh, he may not necessarily feather as much, but he uses cross hatching to build up his values and his textures and form. So, but just in this one section, in the context of these buildings, it doesn't look too out of place, I don't think. I could be wrong because typically when I make these decisions while I'm inking and then I come back to the page the next day, it's like, that looks terrible. So I may change that later. And that's a good thing about dry brush. Typically, if you haven't drawn the line too thick, you can always go back in and smooth out the line. So, all right, so let's grab these clouds. And I like inking smoke just because you get to play with the line weights a lot. And you kind of get to be a little less rigid. So, you know. change the line weights quite a bit. And going forward on these videos, I picked like a pretty easy penciler for these first series of videos. Going forward, I'm going to try to pick some more challenging ones just to try to show you like my process when it comes to like interpretation. Because like I said earlier, like, you know, I can interpret things on these stone textures a little bit. You know, I kind of put my personal touch. But for the most part, Ed McGuinness doesn't leave too much open to interpretation. It's kind of like, this is the way I want the image to look, so just ink that. And there's nothing wrong with that because he's a fantastic penciler. But sometimes you do want that kind of freedom to experiment and kind of go off the beaten path and add things, kind of actually contribute to the image. So, and I guess I will tell you guys this real quick about some of the guys who have difficulty inking. Like, you know, I just got done talking about how, you know, kind of adding stuff and interpreting versus just straight, you know, point-to-point translation of pencils. You know, you kind of want that sometimes, but there are certain types of pencilers that scare me because I have to interpret so much. Like inking a guy like Joe Mad is easy because all of his lines are there. Actually, he pencils so clean that he usually doesn't even use an inker. It's just usually colored, you know, goes straight to color. Works for him, I suppose, but people still like to ink him as samples. But a guy like, and I know I'm throwing him under the bus, so if he ever watches this video, you know, sorry. But Dennis Cowan, although I dig his energy, and that's one of those artists where it's like he's not a precision artist, but I like him anyways, because he has a emotive quality to his art. But Dennis Cowan is pretty hard for me to ink, just because there's decisions that you have to make all over the page. And also, you'll probably notice that I smudged here. I don't know if I pointed that out yet. I didn't. I know I didn't, actually. So let me fix that right now while I'm thinking about it. Okay. Scratch that. But yeah, Dennis Cowan, he scares me because you have to interpret a lot. Frank Miller scares me. Let me see. Who else? Klaus Jansen's pencils can be a little difficult to interpret. And I know, like Dennis Cowan and those other guys, they pencil like that because they already know what the inks are going to be like. They may work with a collaborator, but they'll usually like work with a collaborator that they know, you know, they're familiar with their work. The inker already knows what he's trying to get out of the image, so he'll just, you know, finish up and embellish. You know, at that point, it's not inking, it's embellishing because you have to do a lot of work in your own right as an inker as far as interpreting. So they, you know, I guess they pencil like that on purpose, or either, you know, either they're working with a collaborator or they're doing it themselves, so they definitely know how they want the image to go, and they have way more control over the final line work. And that I can respect. You know, I can't knock their hustle. They doing their thing. So no big deal. But I know Dennis Coward. I was requesting samples because I was in a mood to do a bunch of samples for my portfolio, and I got like a suggestion from Dennis Cowan on Facebook, and he just passed me one of his pages from a book he did for Marvel. It was called Flags of Our Fathers. It was like a Black Panther and Captain America team up. It was basically either Black Panther's father or grandfather back in World War II teamed up with Captain America. And I haven't had the pleasure of reading that book yet, but if I find it at the comic book store, I'll catch it. Um, but yeah, he gave me like a page to ink from that book, and it was like a plane wreck, and you had a guy jumping out of the plane wreck. You have Black Panther like jump on this guy and assault him, and he had like smoke coming out of his fingers. It was a lot going on that page. So there was, you know, Dennis Cowan in the way that he draws figures and faces. Then there's debris from the crashed airplane. There's action lines. There's physicalities. Very very raw action, and that page scares me. I to this day I started on it. I think I got like half done, and I put it down. I have not picked it back up since. Um, is that me being cowardly? Well, maybe, but I guess my thing is, I, I'm not too concerned with putting out something that may not necessarily be 100% my best. But at the same time, I want to represent myself at a certain level. And I know that if I would have tried to finish that page, it wouldn't have been worthy to even share with anybody. It would have just, I would have probably been the only person to see it. So, yeah. All right, so let's finish up spotting and blacks on the figure. I'll just spot this real quick, and I'll go ahead and end the video because it's running kind of long. And I'm still trying to bounce around and decide how long I want these videos to be. Like right now, they're clocking in anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes, and it's like, to me, that's super long. And I I can only hope that I'm capturing your interest enough for you to listen to me ramble for that long. You know, I don't want to overdo it and be annoying. I know I can be, but uh, hopefully you're getting something out of these videos. So um, some feedback would be definitely appreciated. This is my first time actually doing something on YouTube, so definitely wanting to put out quality products. Okay. I just want to grab this here. Like I said, no French curves. French curves are evil. All right. So I think that's a pretty good stopping point. Let me grab this here. As soon as I say it was a good stopping point, there's always something else I want to grab, like this here. Okay, so I think that's a pretty good stopping point for this episode. Um, in the next episode, I guess we're going to start inking this platform that Terrax is standing on, and we'll start doing a lot of the feather work. We can fill blacks here. Put this X here. And in the next video, we'll continue on. Instead of just spotting blacks, we're going to start doing some more of the line work. So, thanks for watching, and hope to see you soon.